Hey everyone, this is Matt with the Recklessly Skeptical podcast.
And my name is Josh.
And I'm Joe, and I'm here this week.
Joe's back.
Whoop-a-dee-doo.
Today is April 2nd, 2017, and we're... Whoa, did you hear that, Craig?
You sound like a boy who's
transitioning?
going through puberty.
Yeah, going through puberty sounds about right.
There you go. It's April 2nd. Yesterday was April Fool's Day, which is funny because here in Utah, it was the Mormons' General Conference, and it was held on April Fool's Day, you know?
Very appropriate.
Yeah, very.
Yeah.
We need to have, but just to, because I know Jacob might be listening, we need to have him on soon. So we can talk about Jacob, who we've had on before, I think.
No, we went on his podcast.
We went on his podcast, and he's been in one of our videos. But we need to have him on to talk more in depth about Mormon society, Mormon culture, and deep Mormon doctrine.
Now, he is Mormon, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
And it's like a Mormon podcast that he does? Or?
No, it's a political libertarian
Okay,
podcast.
so he's a libertarian Mormon, huh?
He doesn't like the title libertarian. But
He doesn't?
No, but he leans with most libertarian ideological ideologicisms.
What was that, Josh?
What was it? Ideologies?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, this day I've been arguing about what it means to be transgender. So it's been kind of a frustrating morning. So I'm going to read a quote, our stolen thought. Today comes from Barack Obama. And, you know, we're not huge fans of Barack Obama here on this podcast, but this was a good quote. So here we go. Quote, I think what you're seeing is a profound recognition on the part of the American people that gays and lesbians and transgender persons are our brothers, our sisters, our children, our cousins, our friends, our coworkers, and that they've got to be treated like every other American. And I think that principle will win out. End quote.
It's a good quote.
Yeah. Transgender is real.
Well,
It is a societal construct.
And gender versus sex.
And if you want to look up the definition, go right ahead.
Yeah.
It
Well, looking at that argument, because Matt was telling me about the argument, so I went on Facebook and found it and started reading up on it. And it makes a lot of sense, you know, especially when you look at the gender versus sexual orientation or sex. It's, I don't know. But there's so many ignorant people out there who don't put a lot of thought into this.
But wait, then I'm confused. Should I be kissing boys or girls? I don't have clear defined lines on what I should do.
Well, what do you want to do?
Oh, that makes sense.
Right?
Ah,
Yeah.
you got me.
As long as it doesn't hurt or harm anyone, do what you want.
Yeah, the person you're kissing has to be a willing party.
Yeah.
And probably an adult, right?
And an adult, yes.
Okay.
We don't need any slippery slope fallacy arguments here saying, now you're going to say you're a tree.
Yeah, so that's what the person in question who first posted that, right? Is that what they're saying? Like, oh, well, where is it going to stop?
Yeah, they said, well, in something that I want to point out that's funny, the reason I laughed at that is because amongst a certain specific group of friends, my nickname is Tree.
So Josh is trans tree.
But
You should start wearing like a bush on your head.
Fuck that. I have a hard enough time with that nickname anyways. I don't need to complicate it anymore.
Is it because you're so freaking tall?
Yeah, probably.
I thought it was because of the size of your penis.
It's like a trunk. It's a tremendous trunk.
He has the best trunk.
But let's talk about that. The initial quote on it was something like transgender, gender, transracial, trans species. Was that original post?
The original post says transgender, trans race, trans species, trans reality, humans are weird. And it's shared with the Rachel Dazal, or however you say her last name. She's the one that says she is black. But she's a white woman.
She was the white woman who got under that controversy.
So what's so weird about that is, like, since race isn't
it isn't a social construct.
Well, I mean, there's some things that are a social construct involved in it, but you can like rap music and identify with the struggle that black people go through without having to consider yourself transracial.
Yeah, so a race has social constructs built on top of that race, but that race itself is not a social construct.
Yeah.
So sex is not a social construct, but things are built on your sex, such as gender, which is a social construct.
Yeah, and I argue that 99% of like the cultural stuff is technically like built on top of it. I mean, like
yes.
what really is race is very, very little. I mean, we share like 99.98% of our genetics with any other human being on the planet, and the depth of the gene pool is so wide that you might be closer related genetically to somebody who's a different happens to have a different skin color than you do. Like for example, there are something like 8. I want to say it was 6 or 8 genes that control your skin color, and there are 64 or multiple dozens of genes that control your height. So me and Joe are on the opposite side of that height spectrum, but he might be closer genetically related to somebody who's short and black than to me.
Yeah.
And so I mean,
well, that's the thing. There's only one race. There's the human race.
Yes.
And I hate how we call African Americans and black people, Asians, and all these different people a different race, because they're not a different race. They have different cultures. But we all basically have pretty much the same genes. We're one race.
Yeah. But the way we structure our justice system has had a huge effect on how that plays out in society, and that's something we've been wanting to actively fight against, and that's something that should, in my opinion, be actively fought against. So
yeah.
All right, are we to the Gallup?
Gallup Daily.
Let's do it. So the Gallup Daily Trump job approval. And so this has a number of things in it, and we go over this every week. The real unemployment is 9.2%. Gallup Good Jobs is at 45.1%. Engaged at work is 31.2%. Economic confidence is at 4, and I think that's where it was last week. Consumer spending is at $109, which is up from last week. And Trump approval rating is at 40%, which held about steady. But in the meantime, during the week, it dropped down to 36%. Yeah, it dropped as low as 35% in Gallup. And right now his approval rating is 40% with a disapproval of 56%, meaning that he's 16 points underwater, according to Gallup. And 538 does a conglomerate of polls, and we talked about this during the election, and he's 12.5 points underwater with them. So overall in polls, he's underwater significantly. Most unpopular president we've had at this point.
Since we've been polling like this, because people will be like, oh, so least popular in the 1799, or you know what I mean? But it's like, well, since we've been tracking, that's what we fucking mean.
And probably the most unpopular president historically, I would have to guess,
but
is
you
Abraham Lincoln.
Yeah, but you can't argue for that based on evidence, really. Maybe you can on...
well, there was a civil war that came out of his election.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's pretty...
But there could have been presidents that were disliked more that you can't really... There's no polls to base it on.
Yeah.
So he's the least popular since we've been polling, for sure.
Yes. And it's not because he's the next Abraham Lincoln.
Yeah.
Far from it.
States' rights. That's all that was about was states' rights, Josh. States' rights to own other people. Weird.
All right, Joe, I think we're knocking this tennis ball to you.
All right. Well, this is coming from Pink News. Family values anti-gay politician accused of affair with his own cousin. All right, so a family values politician who repeatedly proposed anti-gay laws is accused of some less than family values behavior. Joey Hensley, a Republican Tennessee state senator, is alleged to have had an extramarital affair. The accusations have come about as a said cousin divorces her husband, revealing the allegations during testimony in their divorce trial. Senator Hensley has served in the state Senate since 2013. It is a devout Pentecostal Christian and also works as a family physician. As a GOP senator, he's made the most of his few years in the legislature to introduce a string of regressive and anti-gay proposals. He has frequently spoken about the importance of good morals and fiercely opposed social progressive laws. He sponsored a bill that would have forbidden sex ed teachers from ever mentioning the existence of homosexuality on the grounds that it wasn't related to human reproduction. He also sponsored a bill to allow college counselors to reject seeing students, even suicidal ones, on religious principles after a counselor was fired for refusing to see an LGBT student, which he thought was fine. In February, he introduced a bill that would classify children born through artificial insemination as illegitimate, even if both parents are married and consent to the insemination.
Dude, hold on. Sorry, that pisses me off on a personal level because my fiance has been a surrogate, and she's gearing up to be a surrogate again. A couple picked her, and she liked them back and, agreed. So she's been matched. And I saw their pictures. I read their profile. They're an awesome couple. She's Indian. He's a white male. Mm-hmm. She's had 7 miscarriages, and they really want to bring a kid into the world and all of this.
And have a family.
Yeah. And this fucker would call their kid illegitimate, but he's out there fucking his cousin, cheating on his wife. What a piece of shit.
Exactly. And during the divorce trial, it has emerged that he allegedly prescribed opioids to his cousin. Yeah. So although ethically questionable, there's no legal imperative against employee, lover, patient, cousin opioid prescriptions, as he was keen to the point. He's now refused to testify at his cousin's trial, citing his ability to do so as a member of the legislature. Last year, the anti-gay marriage governor of Alabama was under fire after he was caught making a sexual explicit phone call to an aide. Republican Robert Bentley, a strong believer in traditional marriage, recently divorced his wife of 50 years, Diane Bentley. However, allegations have emerged that Mr. Bentley had an extramarital affair with Chief Advisor Rebecca Caldwell Mason while still married to Ms. Bentley, leading to the divorce despite his belief that a marriage is a monogamous union between one man and one woman. Spencer Collier, the former secretary of Alabama Law Enforcement Agency, has this week come forward with allegations that the pair had an affair. Mr. Collier claims he has seen text messages and heard audio recordings of explicit conversations between the pair, the part of a recording published in local media after Governor Bentley tried to deny its existence. In the recording, a still married Governor Bentley talks in an erotic manner about how he wishes to fondle Miss Mason's breasts, as well as appearing to profess his love for her. Governor Bentley has apologized, but continues to insist that he has not had physical sexual relationships with Miss Mason. The governor previously referred to gay marriage as social experiment, claiming it destroys the rights of children to be connected to their biological parents. He also insisted he has always believed in the biblical definition of marriage as being between one man and one woman, which has been deeply rooted in our society for thousands of years. Yeah.
God.
So,
for thousands of years. He wants to say thousands of years.
Yeah.
So all the polygamy that happened in God, there's so many things about the story that are just mind-boggling.
Yeah.
But there's been polygamy practiced in the Bible. There's one spot. There's all of the early traditions. Like, it was not uncommon for polygamy to exist in Hindu cultures. Yeah. It was not uncommon and women used to be considered property in early Jewish tradition. And that's the reason, and even in American tradition, women were looked down as substantially less than their husbands.
Oh, yeah. And even finding a wife in the Bible, if you rape someone and she wasn't married or anything like that,
you pay 20 shekels. You pay 20 pieces of silver.
So you could marry your rape victim.
It's so funny that they can take something such as modern marriage that is not based really in biblical. It's not based in the Bible really in any way, and call it biblical.
Yeah, and
you guys don't know what the fuck you're talking about.
They definitely cherry pick. They find certain things in the Bible that they like, and they say this is us, and then they say, oh well, we don't believe that.
But they would never.
Oh, it's taken out of context. blah 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 blah.
But they never really defined it as being between one man and one woman.
Yes,
because that was
it's not even in there.
It was strong. The Bible was strongly understanding of polygamy.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's the way that the Bible taught, and that's
So it doesn't even say one man, one woman in the Bible?
not at any point. It talks about like marriage, and it
Yeah.
talks about the man should cleave unto his wife, and the wife should cleave unto her husband. But in most of the traditions, if you were a powerful person, you were expected to be a polygamist.
Yeah, well, you had several concubines. And,
Yeah, I mean, what David had 1,000 wives and 2,000 concubines or some shit like that.
Yeah.
And like you said,
But
even
I
if
mean-
it was one man and one woman, the woman was fucking property.
Yeah. She wasn't a partner in the relationship.
But
Exactly.
The thing that makes me upset, and this is something that I've struggled with going through law classes, is immunity on certain things just is bizarre to me. Like, senators and presidents are immune from fucking getting... so, I mean, right now they're passing laws that are totally undermining any sort of environmental impact that we've tried to put in place over the last 50 years.
Yeah.
And we can't hold them responsible for that. Like, we have no way of suing them because as long as they act as their senatorial duty in good faith, quote unquote, air quotes on that, they're not legally responsible for the laws they pass. And that pisses me off. And this guy is using his immunity as a politician to not have to testify in trial, which he would normally be subpoenaed and have to do by the jurisdiction of the court.
Yeah.
And so these immunities drive me insane. So I'm pissed off about that. And then this guy is fighting against people who, like, children by having same-sex couples allowed to be married, it deprives children of their genetic parents. Like, what the fuck does that even mean?
And
like, these children just want a fucking home to live in and a stable environment to be raised in.
Yeah.
And it's just a bullshit statement. I can bring up Diane and her first surrogate. She had a kid for a gay couple using one of their DNA. So he did have his own genetic kid.
Yeah.
So that statement's just bullshit.
Oh, yeah. So Talleyrand noted that the governor's hypocritical stance after news host Rachel Maddow tore into the governor on her MSNBC show. She said, "This isn't just a personal story. Governor Bentley ran for this office that he holds on the grounds that he was a family values candidate, a God-fearing family man, whose campaign ads featured him talking about the Bible while posing with his wife and all of his grandkids. He ran as a man who so believes in the sanctity of traditional marriage that he would fight same-sex marriage with every fiber of his being. His administration filed a Supreme Court brief that said marriages between same-sex couples should not even be thought of as marriages. They should be seen as social experiments." She continued, "Nobody's love life is a political matter unless you, as a politician, make your love life and your personal life a political matter." She added, "He has been a crusading family values politician who has campaigned on the superior morality of his own marriage, his own family, and his own family values. And now he's going to save Alabama from other people's terrible immoral family choices because his values and his family are superior."
Yeah, and that's laughable. Like,
Exactly.
Family values. When you hear someone on the right talk about family values a lot, like if they obsess over it, I mean, there's been so many cases of them like cheating on their spouse or having, what was the story like 2 weeks ago? The guy hired a male prostitute to go have sex with him and paid him with what, marijuana, or was it?
And he was an underage.
Yeah, he was 17.
Yeah.
Like these guys are full of shit. And it plays out way more often in the news than we'd like it to.
Yeah.
Like, because usually there's victims along the way, and that's the thing that upsets us. So in this case, the victims are the children who are being affected by his fucking stupid ass laws. His wife is going to be affected by this. His children are going to be affected.
His
by
grandkids.
This. His grandkids are going to be affected by this.
And all the gay people that couldn't get married because he was against it.
Yeah. So there are victims in this bullshit. I'm a Catholic, or I'm a good Christian with family values, and I'm going to fight against the other.
Yeah.
Like, it's infuriating.
But that's the thing. People fall for it. Their constituents believe them and fall for it. And so what you need to educate. We have to educate, and that's one reason why I like doing this podcast. Maybe someday it'll reach to somebody in Alabama or in most places like that, and someone will listen to it and learn a little more and maybe they can, I don't know, sway their legislation, maybe talk to other people in their town, their city, and open their minds, and not have it be completely closed off.
Well, I hope so too, Joe.
I don't know. But I don't know. Hopefully it's not wishful thinking.
Well, you make a difference in my life.
Hey, thanks, bud.
That was cute. I expected one of you guys to at least laugh.
I was going to say he has a cute smile.
All right.
I started thinking about coffee. I want some more coffee, Matt.
I don't have coffee. I have alcohol.
I want some coffee.
No, we could make coffee, but we should stop talking about coffee.
All right.
Why?
Let's go ahead.
This story is coming from Fox 13, Salt Lake City, Utah.
Woo!
It's kind of a joke, but it has a good
When was this story released?
It has a good meaning.
Was it released yesterday? Yeah.
Yes, April 1st. So, Salt Lake City, the state of Utah, made waves last year after the legislature passed a resolution calling pornography a public health crisis, a fact that Salt Lake County Health Department used to make a joke on Saturday, April Fool's. The department tweeted, "It's finally here. The solution to Utah's public health crisis, the porn vaccine, now available in Salt Lake County." So when they tweeted this, they tweeted a few pictures with it, and they look legitimate. Like you might have thought this was real for a second.
If you're completely science illiterate, yes.
So one shows like an older woman like smiling about to get a shot, and it says, "The porn vaccine, 4 months of clinical trials in development since April 2016. 80% immunity against porn after first dose, 99.8% after the second." And then it says, "Attacks porn addicted cells." Which one of my cells are addicted to porn?
Right?
I'm curious. Eventually, the health department acknowledged it was an April Fool's Day joke, adding that porn itself is a serious concern in society and no laughing matter. Which, whether you agree with that or not, I don't care, but that's pretty damn funny.
So, but I just want to point out to some of our listeners who may not live in Utah that so Salt Lake City alone has some of the most major air quality, like the worst air quality sometimes in the world. Sometimes we beat China in air quality, and it's a joke. Like the smog here gets ridiculous. And so when Governor Herbert came out and said that porn is a major
public health crisis
in Utah, most of the Utahns laughed at this guy. They're like, "No, look at our fucking smog, man."
Like the Mormons didn't, because most Mormons I've seen they hate porn and they think it's a big deal.
Except per population, per capita, they look at more porn than any other demographic in the United States.
Yeah,
maybe
Utah?
That's why they think it's a problem.
Yeah.
Utah and Mississippi, I think they're like the two most religious states, and they look at the most porn.
Yeah. So
I hate that I'm doing this.
I hate it.
It was so good.
I hate myself.
And so we have some major horrible health issues here. I think they were saying our air quality leads to like I think they said 3,000 premature deaths a year due to lung issues and stuff. So that's the thing. If there was a disease going around causing 3,000 people a year to die in Utah, they would be working towards fixing that.
You would think.
But, you would think. But here we have the smog, and that's doing that, and they don't give a shit. Porn's the issue. Porn is the real problem here. And it's like, no, it's not. So, I don't know.
This is as Jason Chaffetz also deregulates with Donald Trump and the rest of the senators, deregulates the air quality laws.
Yeah.
So I just want to.
So it's just going to get worse.
I just want to read one of the testimonials from a guy who got the shot. Quote, "The difference has been night and day. 2 painless shots, and I no longer have the urge."
Yep.
All right.
Groovy.
So this is a funner story. Glenn Beck permanently bans Tommy Lauren from the Blaze report. And this is coming from the Raw Story. Controversial conservative shouter Tommy Lauren. I like that. Shouter.
Yeah.
Tommy Lauren will be taking her act elsewhere. The Blaze co-founder fired her on Sunday. According to New York Post, Beck has permanently banned Lauren, who was suspended last week over comments she made supporting a woman's right to have an abortion. Glenn is reminding the world of his conservative principles by sidelining Tommy after she insulted conservatives by calling them hypocrites, a Blaze source said, adding that the founder of the conservative news site is trying to reestablish his conservative credibility. He's trying to balance being a leading conservative thinker, like he's some fucking deep thinker, and also someone who can unify the country. Yeah, we're going to unify behind Glenn Beck.
Yeah.
He couldn't just sit by and watch Tommy Lauren. There's no way for conservatives to justify anything other than being pro-choice. Lauren riled conservatives, and not in a good way, by telling the host this. I am someone who is for limited government, so I can't sit here and say, I'm for limited government, but I think the government should decide what what women can do with their bodies. I'm for limited government, so stay out of my guns and you can stay out of my body as well. So she said something somewhat sane for once, that government shouldn't be involved in people's bodies, which is something that I believe.
And Glenn Beck lost his shit.
Yeah, he lost his shit. Because he spun it as her saying that that conservatives or that essentially that if you believe in or if you're against abortion, then you aren't for limited government, which is like blew some fucking fundamental Republicans' minds.
Yeah.
So like, yeah.
I want to be careful though giving her any credit, because I've seen a lot of people like, yeah, Tommy, but 3 months ago,
Yeah, she was calling them baby killers.
If you're pro-choice, you're a baby killer. So she's probably just, depending on where she's like Donald Trump. She just probably says whatever she needs to say, whether it's bullshit or not, depending on where she is and who she's talking to.
Well, that's the thing. I've noticed the more crap you say, especially in the media, and the more you flip-flop and, and the more lies you say, the more coverage you get. And the more famous you get, and I imagine the more money you can make.
Yeah.
And so, and look at Donald Trump. He has said so many contradicting things. You can't even keep up. There's no way to keep up. It's tremendous. How many contradicted things he says. It's tremendous. But here he is. He's fucking president now, and people are like, "Oh, I like what he has to say." Well, which one do you like? Which sentence, which contradicting thing do you like?
Yeah, and this is like the rule that you should follow when you're following somebody who is a speaking head or talking head. You got to watch where their feet are walking, not what their fucking mouth is saying.
Yeah, exactly.
And Tommy Lauren is. I'm glad she's gone from the Blaze. She'll probably land a spot on Fox News or some shit.
Oh
like
yeah,
that.
She'll be back.
Yep,
she's not gone. All right, guys, I got a story about about marijuana, actually. So this is coming from San Francisco, the SF Gate, March 20th, so it was a little while ago. Marijuana raids account for more fatalities than marijuana itself. While a DEA fact sheet reads, quote, "No death from overdose of marijuana has been reported," end quote, the same cannot be said about the law enforcement raids dealing with pot. According to data compiled by the New York Times, at least 20 SWAT raids involving marijuana have ended with the loss of life since 2010, reports the Washington Post. Some such fatalities have occurred over minuscule 2 grams of pot, not nearly enough to roll a joint with, while others have occurred trying to flush weed down the toilet or for merely sleeping in bed unresponsive to officers' demands. While these deaths seem senseless and avoidable, some law enforcement officials believe it's necessary to protect the lives of the officers. These are dangerous people we're dealing with, an Arkansas SWAT commander told the New York Times. If you have a dope house next door, there's probably nothing the police can do that will be overreacting. Despite that logic, officers have also lost lives cracking down on a substance that's legal in several states. In 2013 early morning raid, a rural Texas SWAT team member was shot and killed by homeowner and pot grower Henry McGee out of the fear of being robbed. A grand jury later acquitted McGee of his capital murder charge. all of us felt that if I were in bed and heard anything that made me get up and get a gun, and all of a sudden my door explodes, I'm shooting, one of the jurors told the New York Times. Why in the world would you do a full-out assault on a guy growing pot? Meanwhile, cannabis continues its impressive 10,000-year streak of not killing anyone by overdose.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
The framing the police tried to go with is fucking insane.
Yeah, well, yeah, it doesn't matter if they're sleeping in bed or on the toilet or whatever.
But
they're dangerous people. And they're not. Honestly, I've never really met, I mean, I don't know.
A dope house?
A dope house,
fucking someone is smoking pot all of a sudden turns the house into a dope house.
Yeah.
Apparently, most houses in America are dope houses.
Yeah. See, this is what they're doing, especially the DEA and these SWAT team police and all these people. They lump marijuana up with things like heroin and crystal meth and like real horrible drugs that will cause people to be dangerous.
Yes.
That's the thing. I've never met anybody, like I've said in, I think, our last podcast, and someone runs out of pot, I'm out of pot. I haven't smoked pot in a month because I'm out.
Dude, you just...
but you meet someone who's a heroin addict or a tweaker and stuff, and when they're out of heroin or meth, they're going to go get some, and they're going to do whatever it takes to get it. They're going to rob, they're going to steal, they're going to possibly kill someone, and that's how they are. That's a dangerous drug. It's extremely addicting. Marijuana is not addicting, so people don't go out and do horrible things to get it.
You just haven't been to the right fucking marijuana dens, man.
Yeah, I guess I haven't.
Fucking, just people passed out all over the place.
And, I mean...
having seizures and overdosing.
In some aspect, that is true. But the reason why that marijuana will be tied up in criminal organizations that deal with other drugs is because it is legal. If marijuana was moved into the norm and it was made legal, it'd be like alcohol. There's no gangs running around selling alcohol like during Prohibition.
Yeah.
You move it into the illegal world, you move it into the underground, and there is going to be some sort of criminality behind it just by the nature of it being underground.
Yeah, and exactly. That's another thing too. Growing up in Old Town Midvale and stuff like that, you meet a lot of drug dealers and most people I've met a lot of drug dealers that just stick straight to marijuana.
Yeah, a lot of them, most of them I would say are like that.
Yeah.
But there is going to be some sort of
But then you're going to get
aspect.
those cokeheads and tweakers and the heroin addicts who are selling marijuana, and then they're going to try to sell you something else, So, and that's another thing. If it was regulated and you could go down to the dispensary and pick up marijuana, you don't have to deal with those people. And that's another thing, too. I saw a meme that, those people in dispensaries who work there, they card. Drug dealers don't.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And so if you want to make society safer, legalize cannabis, and then you're going to see a drop in other drugs.
But you might save lives in Mexico, Joe, by taking away one of their drugs that they make a lot of cash from.
Yeah.
You don't want you want to defund those criminal syndicates?
I want to defund the cartels in Mexico.
God
yes.
Damn it. Just think about the children or something.
Yeah, because the cartels are
all about the children.
Yeah, all about the children.
Just like those right wingers are all about family values.
Exactly. Alternative news, alt-right.
Here we go, guys. This is, and gals, by the way. This is coming from theatlantic.com. Millennials are outreading older generations. All us dumb, lazy millennials, we just sit and read all the time, I guess. So kids today with their selfies and their Snapchats, hey, I love Snapchat, and their love of literature, millennials, like each generation that was young before them, tend to attract all kinds of ear from their elders for being superficial, self-obsessed, anti-intellectuals. But a study out today from the Pew Research Center offers some vindication for the younger set. Millennials are reading more books than the over 30 crowd, Pew found in a survey of more than 6,000 Americans. So that's a pretty good poll. 6,000 is good size. Some 88% of Americans younger than 30 said they read a book in the past year, compared with 79% of those older than 30. At the same time, American readers' relationship with public libraries is changing, with younger readers less likely to see public libraries as essential in their communities. Yeah, I just order books on Amazon.
Yeah,
I do go. I was actually at. Well, I wasn't at the library, but I was at Barnes and Noble last week. So.
Did they make sure to clarify that the Facebook doesn't count?
We will see. We will see. There's some. You sit tight, Josh.
Okay.
I still think public libraries are essential in
totally
in more poor communities, because those people can't order books, those children can't order books, and it's
libraries are great.
Yeah,
we should have them for sure. Overall, Americans are buying more books than they borrow, the study found. Among these who read at least one book in the past year, more than half said they tend to purchase books rather than borrow them. Fewer Americans are visiting libraries than in recent years, but more Americans are using library websites. Yeah, so that's pretty interesting that millennials are reading more. So, yeah.
That's very cool. Good going, guys. Keep reading.
Keep reading them books.
I've read a book in the last 12 months. Have you, Matt?
I've been so busy, dude. In the last 12 months I have.
How about
yes,
you?
I read David Silverman's book.
Yeah, I've read several textbooks.
Yeah, so I read Bill Nye's Undeniable, and yeah, it's not
I heard that was
climate
inspired.
change.
I heard that it was inspired by
his debate with Ken Ham.
Yes.
Yeah, and he talks about that in the first part of the book.
Do you guys listen to Star Talk or All Stars Star Talk podcast?
No.
It's Neil deGrasse Tyson's podcast, and Bill Nye's a regular guest on it, and I highly recommend you guys listening to that podcast.
And
it's a lot of science talk.
Have you seen Bill Nye's new show on Netflix?
Is it out?
I think they said March 27th.
I'll have to check it out. I haven't watched it yet.
I haven't watched it yet, but I've been excited to watch it.
All right, well, I have a science-based story.
Oh, do you now?
Yeah, scientists can reverse DNA aging in mice, according to Time Health.
Ooh.
Researchers have found a way to protect a mouse's DNA from damage that comes with aging, and they're ready to test it on people. Dr. David Sinclair from Harvard Medical School and his colleagues reveal new findings in the latest issue of Science. They focused on an intriguing compound with an anti-aging properties called NAD+. Short for nicotinamide. I don't even know why I tried to read the full one. Adenine dinucleotide. It's been known that younger mice had more than in older mice. And back in 2013, researchers found that they boosted the NAD+ levels of older mice. They looked biologically like much younger animals.
Oh, that's really cool.
In the latest paper, the scientists revealed new detail on how NAD+ works to keep cells young. Sinclair put drops of NAD into the water of the group of mice, and within a couple of hours, the NAD+ levels started to rise. Within the first week, the scientists saw obvious reversal in muscle and improvement in DNA repair. And then the doctor goes on to say, we cannot tell the difference between the tissue from an old mouse, and that is 2 years old, versus the young mouse that is 3 to 4 months year.
Really
crazy.
Yeah. And it's interesting because they talk about...
Were they able to keep those the mice alive longer than average?
Yeah, I mean, it seems so. It seems like they're completely stopped aging.
Really?
Yeah.
Once again, science saves you. Jesus doesn't.
Yeah.
The reason they think that NAD+ had these effects is because the compound is linked to DNA repair functions in the body. Each time a cell divides, DNA copies itself, but it's not always a perfect process, and errors are sometimes introduced, causing damage to the DNA.
You mean our bodies weren't made perfectly in God's image?
No. Normally, most of these insults can be repaired as long as there's enough DNA repair compound called PARP1. The repair compound and NAD+ are intimately linked, and I want to go to the part where they... scientists have harnessed this to target cancer cells. A class of cancer drugs called PARP inhibitors are prescribed for breast cancer. Interference with PARP's ability to repair DNA, which ultimately leads to the demise. But not all people who take the drug respond well to it, and manipulating NAD+ levels may be one way to enhance that response. So essentially what they're trying to do is they found this study that reversed the age of mice so significantly that they can dissect the mice, and they cannot tell the difference between a mouse that is 2 years old, which is significantly old for a mouse,
Yeah.
and a mouse that is 3 to 4 months old. And they're trying to figure out how to translate this into humans. He's formulated that a capsule version of the precursor to NAD+, called, I'm not going to read that, a naturally occurring compound found in amounts of food like broccoli, cucumber, avocado, and edamame, and plans to test 25 humans to see if the compound is safe.
Really?
Yes, so we might see some of this effect in humans. Could you imagine, like, waking up 20 years younger?
Yeah, that would be nuts.
Yeah. So that's what they're working on in science.
Science.
And so the compound naturally exists in some of the vegetables you read off there?
Yeah, so these are things that would boost it, but of course they're not in large enough quantities to actually reverse aging, but they're trying to do it so that they have those high enough levels. So this is something that you naturally have in your body.
Yeah.
And there was, I think it's NMN is the human version of it, and that could be wrong. I'm not smart science, or I'm not the most inclined to know all the hormones in the human body, but essentially what he's trying to do is do that for humans, raise our levels to see if that has any age reversing effects.
Cool. That's
Cool.
really cool. I would like to. Will you send that study to me?
Of course. All right.
I
Joe.
just want to
trying to play God.
Yeah.
All right. So, this is coming from Science Alert. The article is from March 25th. It's kind of old, but scientists think they've traced the very first mutations in a human life. So for the first time, scientists have caught a glimpse of the earliest genetic mutations in human development. Using whole genome sequencing, they wound back time on cell samples from adults and revealed what took place in the genome when they were still microscopic embryos, it turns out. So it turns out our first two cells contribute to our development in very different ways. So our very first two cells. So mutations come in two forms. The hereditary ones we get from our parents, which can be found in virtually every cell of the body, and the acquired or somatic mutations that can occur at any stage of a person's life, including those very first days when the embryo is just starting to split into multiple cells. Somatic mutations don't necessarily cause problems, but they can sometimes lead to cancer and other diseases. They also don't necessarily live in every cell. That's called masochism.
It's called masochism?
Or, masochism. I don't know.
Shit's getting kinky up in
Yeah,
here.
oh yeah. So we have a fairly murky understanding of the somatic mutations that happen during the earliest life stages because we can't just watch the stuff happening in real time. But now researchers have discovered a way to trace these mutations back to their first appearances. This is the first time that anyone has seen where mutations arise in the very early human development. It is like finding a needle in a haystack, says genetic Young Seok Ju from the Wellcome Trust Sanger Institute in the UK and the Korea Advanced Institute of Science and Technology. So there are just a handful of these mutations compared with the millions of inherited genetic variations, and finding them allowed us to track what happened during embryogenesis. So to find these mutations, the team analyzed blood and tissue samples from 279 people with breast cancer. Using samples from cancer patients allowed them to test whether mutations were present in both normal blood and tissue and in surgical removed tumor samples. Since breast cancer tumors develop from a single cell, a somatic mutation would either be present in every tumor cell or not at all, which gives a clue to its possible origins. By tracking and comparing the spread of different mutations in these various tissue samples, the scientists verified a whopping 163 mutations that must have happened within the first few cell divisions of the person's embryonic development. So, I don't know. That's really cool. This gave them a unique insight into how early embryonic cells interact. And that's not all. A statistical analysis revealed that when a fertilized egg divides for the first time, those two cells actually contribute building material for the rest of the body at different proportions. It appears that one of the two first cells that make us up gives rise to 70% of the body tissue, while the other one chips in for the rest. We determined that contribution of the first embryonic cells to the adult blood cell pool and found one dominant cell that led to 70% of blood and cells and one minor cell, says the molecular biologist Inigo Martin Sorina from the Sanger Institute. This opens up an unprecedented window into the earliest stages of human development. That's exciting because having the window let us discover even more about how humans develop and acquire various mutations from the get-go. Even though the vast majority of mutations are random and harmless, occasionally they can affect an important gene, causing a developmental disorder or disease. Essentially, the mutations are archaeological traces of the embryonic development left in our adult tissues. So if we can find and interpret them, we can understand human embryology better. So the researchers hope their discovery is just the first of many steps that will help us gain a better understanding of what happens to humans in the earliest days when we're all nothing more than just a clump of cells. But what's really cool about this is if they can start identifying those mutations in those cells, they can work towards curing diseases like cancer and other mutation diseases. I don't know. It's really cool.
So just like Josh's story, you're trying to play God.
Exactly.
No, that's awesome. That's really cool. Seriously, to hear Josh, the story he just did, and then that story, Joe.
Yeah.
It's amazing and exciting what we as human beings can accomplish when we put our mind to it and we look at the facts and we do the scientific method. It's amazing what we can accomplish.
Well,
We've been to the fucking moon, for fuck's sake.
And you know where all that stems from, right? Where does that that's the thing. It's not it's a skeptic's mind. You know what I mean? It's not someone who goes, "Oh, well, that person's dying because God did it. So let's not look into it because that's what God wants." It comes from a skeptic mind. Someone goes, "Well, no, let's not look at it that way. Let's look into the root of the problem. Let's figure it out. Let's
look at the evidence.
Let's look at the evidence and try to figure it out instead of just, oh, I don't understand this, so magic."
And some people think skepticism is the same as being cynical.
No.
It's not. Being skeptical is just putting your beliefs to match the evidence, and you're not going to believe something until there's sufficient evidence.
Well, I think skepticism looks cynical because we're honest. So you look at a skeptic and you look at a theist, and the theist goes, "Oh, I don't know, God. Ha, my life's happy and great. Doop-de-doo. I have nothing to worry about because God." But then you get an honest skeptic, and they're like, "Well, I don't know. Let's look into it. Let's be, cautious. Let's blah, blah, blah." And I can see how that can come off as cynical.
Yes, but it isn't.
But it's not cynical at all. No, you're just being honest. You want to figure things out. You want to look at things honestly instead of just applying magic everywhere. I don't understand. So magic.
Yep.
Yeah, go fucking... Yeah.
Go
be cynical, please.
God can be an answer for everything, just like magic can be an answer for everything.
Oh yeah. You can apply it anywhere. Anywhere, it's just like faith, and it's faith-based thinking. You can apply it anywhere where you don't have evidence for anything, and you don't understand something. You can just... It's a filler.
Yes.
That's all I see the whole God hypothesis is as a filler of things you don't understand. So if you don't understand a certain issue and you just God, you don't have to worry about anything. You just go marching along and be, I don't know.
And Matt Dillahunty, like he says, whenever he's arguing with a theist, he'll say, "Is there any proposition that I can't believe based on faith?"
Oh yeah,
I can believe anything. I can believe white people are superior to black people.
And you have no evidence for that.
but I believe it on faith.
Believe it on faith. You can believe. He also says universe farting pixies instead of a god. How do you know God isn't just an unintelligent universe farting pixie? I have faith in that, so
Yes.
you can believe that.
If that's your faith, so let's get past that and look at the evidence to come up with the best conclusion.
Exactly, and I'm sorry that's not cynical. It's skepticism.
All right. I have a story coming from Pathos.com from the Friendly Atheist blog, our friend who I've never met or talked to, Hema Mehta. But do you guys watch his YouTube? He's really nice.
Yeah, he is a friendly atheist.
He is a friendly atheist.
He is super friendly.
Well, and you know what he does for a profession, right?
No.
He's a math teacher.
He's a math teacher?
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
I want to.
Is he a mathematician?
I mean, he teaches high school math. If that's a mathematician, then yes.
Because a lot of mathematicians are theists. They can prove it through numbers. I hear theists say that all the time.
That's so silly. Like, people who try and do that have no philosophic training at all.
I know.
But
All right. That's awesome.
But you know they do. They say that shit all the time.
Oh, yeah.
He's a mathematician. He believes in God, so because numbers and stuff. And it's like, I don't think you understand.
Yeah. There's intelligent people on both sides of the debate, so it doesn't matter who is making the argument. The argument is what matters.
Exactly.
Whether he's a mathematician. I mean, it does matter. If you're talking about biology, it'd be nice to talk to a biologist. Like,
Yeah.
who is making the argument does matter in certain aspects. But
Yeah.
you can't say he's right on God because he's a mathematician.
Yeah.
You know? So, this story is coming from... I just said that, guys. Hema Mehta.
Sorry.
Let's get started. So, study finds that atheists, just like the devoutly religious, don't fear death. Who's more afraid of death, atheists or the devoutly religious? You might be tempted to think atheists are more worried about it. After all, we don't believe in an afterlife, so death really marks the end of everything. Unlike religious people who are absolutely certain there's something better awaiting them on the other side, atheists don't put stock in that kind of false hope.
okay, so I do have to just throw in a comment. Technically, atheists could believe in an afterlife, but that would be kind of funky. Because
Yeah.
Yes. I think generally, though, they probably don't, but that is not a requirement for atheists.
Yeah,
atheism.
I know
Yeah.
it's some atheists who believe in some form of reincarnation. It's not like the Buddhist or Hindu reincarnation, but it's like recycling of your cells, and that's what matters. And it's like, no, that's a little funky. That doesn't really make sense. But
Yeah.
But I mean, your cells. If you're put into the ground, they'll definitely be recycled. But
yeah, but what I
it's
care
not
about,
conscious.
yeah, what I
you
care
know.
about is my conscious mind.
Yeah.
When I'm identifying myself, that's like my conscious mind and my nervous system. That's what I think of when I think of myself.
Yeah.
And so, like, to think that counts as reincarnation, or they say that's reincarnation, it's like, I don't think you understand what reincarnation is supposed to mean.
Yeah.
But according to a new meta-analysis of death anxiety published in the journal Religion, Brain, and Behavior, atheists and the extremely religious are about the same when it comes to not fearing death. The researchers proposed an inverted U-curve to describe how scared people are of death. Those on the left who aren't religious have very little anxiety about death, just like those on the far right. It actually makes a lot of sense. When you realize death is just a natural part of life, and you're confident about what will happen after you die, and you're focused on making the most of the life you have, it's not surprising that atheists don't fear death. And
I disagree with that. The people who are on the left who aren't religious, I feel like there are quite a bit of religious people on the left, and
No, he's not talking about political
he's
left
not
or political
about
left.
the graph.
The graph that he created is religiosity, left and right. So the more religious you are,
I see it.
and the less religious you are, the less you're concerned with like what happens after you die.
Oh, okay.
In fact, based on the curve, people who fear death the most are the ones in the middle who aren't exactly sure what they believe. That makes sense, too. I would suspect the scariest thing about dying is not knowing what's going to happen to you, and it's the wishy-washy religious types who fit that mold perfectly. It should be noted that there are caveats to this analysis, as explained by Yasamin Tayag at Inverse. That's not racist, okay? While this study covered a huge sample size, its results can be considered definitive because it wasn't totally inclusive. It counted mostly American beliefs and dealt only with Abrahamic religions. In the paper, the researchers noted that the link between the fear of death and religious feelings might change from location to location, and it might vary depending on the religion in question.
Oh, okay.
So I think that's a really good thing to point out. But within, the Abrahamic religions and atheists in the United States, this graph is pretty accurate.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. And see, I'm not. Death I do have some anxiety about death, but it's not really my own death. Because when I'm dead, I won't fucking care. But when people who I care about die, then that's fucking, the grief sucks.
I think we've talked about death before. My main issue is I don't want it to be extremely painful or discomforting.
Yeah, so it's not death, it's dying.
Yeah, I'm scared of dying.
Yeah, and I'm more worried about...
I'm not scared of death.
I'm more afraid of grief and loss more than my own death.
Yeah.
Just the other day, I was driving down the street, and I've thought about death a little bit in the last week. Josh and I have talked about it and stuff. And I was driving, and I just looked over at the graveyard. I happened to be driving by a cemetery, and I just looked at all the headstones and was like, at one point, I'm going to fucking be in that. I'm going to be under that ground in a fucking box. Yeah. And it's just a weird thing to kind of think about. But then I've been kind of meditating a little bit lately. And it really helps, man. It's this type of meditation that Sam Harris talks about, and he does. And sorry, this is like going off on
that's fine.
On a sidetrack. But it really does help. It's all about being in the moment, being now.
Yeah.
And Sam always talks about people are always just looking for that next thing they're going to buy or that next whatever it is. But you have to be able to be happy now, in the moment. And if you just focus on that and focus on your breathing and you do these certain tricks, it really does help.
Yeah. Well, what's funny is you talk about that. I was actually thinking about that yesterday, because I'm stressed. I got money problems, and I want to start this new job, but I really can't right now because it's a huge pay cut. And, I have all these issues, and I'm like, in the future, things will be better in the future. And I've said that for years. But yesterday I was sitting there and I'm like, what if the future never comes? What if I die? I want to be happy. Mm-hmm. I want to be happy now. And I was like, so no matter whatever happens to me now, and no matter how far behind I am and how much more I want to achieve, I'm still going to try to be happy, and live in the moment because I'm alive right now, and it's like I was 23 10 fucking years ago, and now I'm 33, and time just flew by, and I didn't see how good life was back then, and I sometimes have a hard time seeing how good life is now, and it's like I might not have another 10 years, so I want to live in the moment and understand how good life is right now while I'm in it.
And you might,
and I feel like I can appreciate it a little more.
And in 10 years, you'll be 43, and you might be thinking the same exact thing about, 10 years ago, I didn't think I was happy when I was 33, but it was actually pretty good.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
You might be
so I want to understand that now and be happy with now, and then whether my life is the same in 10 years or whether I'm dead in 10 years or whether my life is better in 10 years or even worse. I want to be able to, look back and go, 10 years ago my life may have not been the best or it was or whatever, but I was happy with myself and where I was, and I recognized that happiness back then instead of 10 years later.
And with saying that, I assume you're not saying, and I'm not saying, that you shouldn't plan and try and make things better. You always have to look to the future, but with that being said, you have to be happy in the present.
Yeah, and it doesn't hurt to take some time out and just focus on the present. There have actually been multiple studies that show that type of meditation is beneficial both psychologically and health-wise. So
yeah, I recommend Sam Harris's podcast, Waking Up Podcast. It's my favorite podcast, and it's really helpful.
Does he talk about that sort of meditation in a lot of his podcasts, or is there a certain podcast that he discusses?
Yeah, so they're all over the spectrum, but he mainly talks about politics and world events. But he does have some specific podcast episodes where he has talked with like meditation
experts,
and they discuss it. And he even says sometimes it gets out there a little weird, but he doesn't believe in like real wooey shit.
Well, yeah,
but yeah, there are some good episodes, and on his website, you can find meditation. You can find meditation info there.
Oh, yeah, okay. And so I want to bring back kind of to the story, but first I want to mention that, atheists can be spiritual to a degree, even though I hate that fucking term.
Yes.
Well, what does it mean?
Spiritual?
Well, it means something different to everyone, but what I would say is you can experience something more than just who you are as a human being. You can feel something bigger, I guess.
And I wouldn't say that it's bigger than what you are. I as someone who...
Deeper, maybe?
Yeah, I mean, like, I think that there's more to our psychological ability, and not more than... It's more than what we think. It's not more than human. It is human, because we're human.
Yes.
I don't think that there's some source outside of us that's giving
like
us...
a soul or...
Yeah.
I would say it's more than what we see in the general sense or at every day.
Yeah, and
life.
I think that we have... and it's not like multiple layers, like literally, but I think we have a deeper psychological well-being. And so there's how you're feeling and how you're feeling right now. You can be happy, sad, angry, or whatever, but there's a deeper psychological aspect to humans that we don't, that tends to get neglected in the day-to-day bullshit.
And a lot of this kind of goes about free will and consciousness and how it develops in our human brain, because you sit there and you try and focus on something, thoughts just come to your brain without your control. And when you are meditating, you are trying to just focus on your breathing, and you will find thoughts coming into your brain, and before you even realize, or like after 10 seconds, you're like, oh, I just thought about 3 things, and you didn't even realize it.
Yeah.
So this is a whole deep conversation we could go down, but it's about free will. It's about consciousness. It's psychology. There's a lot of different aspects to cover here, and maybe we can talk about it one day.
Yeah, but the reason I hate the term spiritual is because it implies a spirit or a soul, and that's where I kind of get stuck, because I don't think there's anything supernatural about human beings.
Well, and watching atheist debates against theists, whenever anyone says, oh, well, I'm spiritual, especially like when you watch the Atheist Experience, Matt Dillahunty, and all the other hosts are like, well, what does spiritual mean to you? Define spiritual, and nobody can.
Well, and for me, it's just a deeper psychological well-being.
Yeah, see, and that makes a lot of sense to me because, I don't know.
Nothing supernatural.
But now to bring it back to the story, now I do want to take a second to point out, on that curve, they're talking about the people in the middle of the wishy-washy religious people, or I think that
agnostics.
And there are agnostic atheists who really aren't sure, and I don't mean agnostic atheists like you and I are, but agnostic atheists who are uncertain about their atheism.
Yeah.
And I want to point out that I think that that's part of the way that religion recruits, is that they go after those wishy-washy religious people or those uncertain atheists. And so then they try and draw them in. And because there's more theists out there than atheists, and because religion says with a certainty, hey, we know how to deal with that angst. Whereas most agnostic atheists don't say with a certainty, hey, I have an answer.
I say I don't know. See, and that's hard for people to say I don't know.
I had some missionaries come up to me the other day. It was before work. I was drinking a coffee, smoking a cigarette, and they come up and they were like, we just felt like we needed to come talk to you. And I was like, oh, great, that's cool. And I was like, but they come over to talk to my fiance's son and stuff, because he's, and he likes the church and all that stuff, and I'm not one to say no. It's like, but I am one to discuss things with him. Some people believe this, some people don't, some people believe different things. There's thousands of different types of religions. Some people don't believe in any God like me, and I discuss things with him, but he wants to continue doing this. So,
sure.
So, and it's really not my place to say I'm not his father, and, but the missionaries came over and they were like, so are you Holly's husband? And I was like, yeah. And I was like, look, I'm going to tell you right now, Ashton loves you guys coming over, and he loves talking to you guys. And but I want to let you know you're not going to get anywhere with me. I'm an atheist, and and oh, well, we talk to atheists all the time, and I'm like, well, I'm not sure if you want to talk to me because, and so
I would have loved talking
well,
to them.
I wanted them to know. I was like, and I told them again after we were done talking because they wanted to get the fuck out of there. I was like, look, I don't want this to keep you guys from coming here because Ashton loves you guys coming here and he loves having Bible study with you guys, but, I don't want the fact that I just schooled you on your religion to, persuade you. And they were like, yeah, that's cool. But it was funny at the end of the, we talked about faith and all this stuff. And, and I was like, well, faith isn't a reasonable pathway to truth. Well, you have faith in things. And I'm like, no, I don't. Well, you have faith in this. And I'm like, no, I have reasonable expectations because of evidence and facts, but I don't have faith, And so, like, we went off on all sorts of stuff. And, I was talking to one missionary. The other one was sitting back, like, looking at me all bug-eyed. And I'm wondering, does he think I'm Satan or am I making sense to him?
One of the two.
Well, I was probably making sense to him, so he thought I was Satan.
Yeah.
And so it was funny. But, yeah, by the end of it, I was like, oh, they asked me. This is why I brought it up. They asked me, so do you know anybody around here that might need God, maybe someone who's going through a breakup or just had a baby? And I was like, oh, that's the perfect time to indoctrinate, isn't it? And he just gave me this look, and I was like, no, not really. So you guys have a good day. And
So, and I have one more side story. Sorry, Matt, we're going to go over the podcast quite a bit, but
That's fine.
The one time I was at work, and I was working at a fast food restaurant. I'm not going to specify. And I was in the back thinking about the great debate stuff, and like I just started watching debates between William Lane Craig and different atheists, and so I was like thinking about like what I would do if I was in their circumstances or what I would argue, and so I was thinking like all this atheist stuff, and then I go up to the window. An order comes in. I go to the window and hand this guy I'm being friendly and whatnot, and this guy like looks at me and he's like, whatever you're doing, God wants you to do it. He's like some born again Christian.
You're like, I'm thinking about how to beat theist in debates, and this guy tells me that God wants me to do it.
yeah. And it's like if he knew what you were doing, he wouldn't say God wants you to do it.
Yeah. It's hilarious.
That was a sign from God.
I know.
Josh.
So apparently, if God is real, God wants me to prove that he isn't real.
That's the best thing I've ever heard.
So let's move on to a new story. The atheist struggling to find therapists in the Bible Belt, and this is more of a case study than it is like a general statistical story like we usually do.
Okay.
In the lead up to 2016 presidential election, life in the town of Easley, South Carolina, was tense for Leigh Drexler, and this is from the Atlantic, written by Angela Almeida. Pickup trucks with airborne Confederate flags seem more prevalent than ever before, and her grandparents, who had never voted in their lives, registered to cast their ballots for Donald Trump. Drexler felt isolated. My family has always directed their point of view at me, but it has been a million times worse than normal. Every time we're in conversation, it's either about election or religion. It's a dynamic that led Drexler to identify as a democratic socialist and an atheist, to go online in search of a therapist, someone who would perhaps better understand her lack of faith. She scouted towns within 20-mile radius, but only faith-based practitioners turned up. She resorted to distance counseling over the phone with a therapist a few states away. I knew there would be Christian counselors here, but I didn't think it was going to be all that I was going to find, she said. And then, kind of skipping ahead on the story, Sigmund Freud once called religion the universal obsession with universal obsessional neurosis with humanity, setting the tone for a long fracture between psychology and theology. Although the relationship between two domains have been softened over the past few decades, the Tate, I don't even know how to say that, persists in part because they were devoted to a similar purpose, explaining the intricacies of the human mind and soul. The degree into which he fits in to the mix can vary, from Christian rehabilitation centers and biblical life coaches to religious private practices, spiritual counselors, and sometimes as contentious as conversion therapy. Christian groups have been adopting mental health as a new frontier in recent years. In the forefront of this trend are faith-based therapies, which have reportedly experienced a surge in popularity over the last decade. It talks about Alcoholics Anonymous and how they talk about God or power greater than ourselves, and how people...
And they have to accept that, right?
That's a good question. I don't.
Oh, well, no, I feel... So they don't make you accept that before you can move on into other issues then?
I think it depends on the group of people you are with. So I mean, I've technically have gone through the 12 steps as an atheist.
Mm-hmm.
So, which is interesting, I guess, to a lot of people.
Did you find it more difficult, though? I mean, did that ever come up, accepting a power greater than yourself,
Sure.
or God and all that?
Sure, and a power greater than myself, in my mind, is absolutely not a God, and absolutely has nothing to do with theological basis, and is not something that is supernatural in any way.
So
okay.
I went to AA. I went once, and a friend who goes there constantly and has gone. She's gone for years. Is my buddy's wife, actually. I went with her, and they knew that I'm an atheist, and they told me, kind of like what you're saying, Josh, that higher power doesn't have to be a God. It can just be really anything that you feel is stronger than you. And like you said, I think it depends who you go with. Like the one I went to is a group of islanders, and we drank
Polynesians, man.
Kiva?
Kava.
Kava, yeah.
Yeah, we drank kava at AA.
Kava fucks you up.
We only had like one bowl of it,
Yeah.
but my mouth did go a little numb. So it just depends where you go, I think, because they're drinking fucking kava at AA. But
Yeah.
they didn't say you have to have a god or whatever.
Yeah, and I think AA in general as a community is kind of moving away of the you have to believe in God and Jesus and blah 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 blah. I've met a couple of atheistic people in AA who are atheists, definitely, just like I am.
Mm-hmm.
But those are way the minority. I think that 98% or so are God fearing or whatever, however you want to phrase it.
Yeah.
Are you still running? Didn't you run NA? Or you
No,
host,
I used to be secretary, so it's a service position, and it doesn't mean that I was anything special, but I was secretary for an HA meeting.
HA.
Yeah. So,
Even though you weren't ever.
No, I never. What's funny, I've used some pills. I've snorted pills in the past, but I've never stuck it in the vein. So, I mean, it was kind of a weird fit, but it helped keep me away from drinking and using drugs. So I think it was good overall, even though sometimes there'd be some really cringy shares about Jesus Christ and stuff like that. And then I would share after, hey, you don't need to believe in Jesus. I don't even believe in God. And and so there would be, that dynamic. That was weird.
Well, good on you for doing that, Josh.
But, I mean, the main reason I want to get into this story is also because I've done some I've seen counselors here in Utah, and most of them have been religious, and it can get awkward at times. And so it is kind of rough because you're talking about things, and one therapist was good about it, about not interjecting God, but I could see like he'd be at the edge of his seat really wanting to say, well, you should
Go to church.
Yeah, do this religious. It wasn't that he wanted me to go to church. It was like, God's the answer.
Yeah.
It's like, no, God. And I know he'd wanted to say it, but he never did. But it can be tough being in a highly religious area and feeling trapped. And that's one of the main reasons that I started going to atheist groups.
Mm-hmm.
Even though that ended up being a shit show, as Matt can attest to, how that played out. But it's important that you're connected to other people, I guess is the
community is a very important thing. We're social creatures, and we need to socialize and interact with each other. And it's really hard to do that when some people are skeptical and other people are, they believe in magic. And so it's really hard to connect. And that magic affects everything about them, their daily lives and every little thing. It's really hard to connect and be social with people who have completely different beliefs than you do.
Yeah.
So it's good to find people who are similar to you, but, I feel like, I don't know. I feel like some people in Utah are atheists just to be rebellious.
Yeah,
and like I felt like that being part of that atheist Facebook group. That's how I felt every time I went on there. I felt like a lot of them were just, we're just trying to be rebellious. They weren't really atheists.
Like a phase?
Like a phase. I felt like some of them were just fucking assholes who thought they were the top dog, smartest person in the planet. I'm an atheist. Look at me. Meh, 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 meh. And it's like, okay, well, we all can have different beliefs on different issues, like political issues and things like that. But just because you're an atheist and I'm an atheist doesn't mean that this is a fucking genius game that we're playing here.
Yeah, and
who's more genius?
yeah, and
Is it me? I'm more atheist than you are because I'm more of a genius than you are.
yeah, and I think that
And it's
one
like,
of the-
oh my God, you sound like a fucking Mormon.
yeah, and one of
I
the-
don't want to hang out with you. I don't want to go to meetings with you.
And one of the things that I think is common is that so people become atheistic, think that they come to a realization of a number of things all at once, like because
Yeah.
they realize that hey, if religion's not true, then all the religious people are somewhat living a lie, and then they're able to separate a lot of issues from religion, and so they come to conclusions, and they expect that every other fucking person who's gone through that experience came to the exact same conclusions. So, like the debates and political debates in the atheist sphere of things, I swear to God, is 10 times more heated than in regular.
Oh yeah. Oh
yes.
my gosh. And well, too, I'm sorry, but a lot of these I noticed so many of these atheists in Utah that I would argue they would hold on to their political group like a theist holds on to their church. And it's like, oh my, where's your skepticism there, bud? You know, like it's, I don't know, it drove me fucking insane. So
All right, Joe, it's your story.
I'm actually out of stories.
Oh, Matt,
So
it's your
I'm just
story.
going to sit here and make weird noises. Here we go.
No.
That is a weird sound.
Yeah, you should stop now.
It's Joe.
Okay.
Joe. We're in a fish tank.
I just wanted to entertain the masses, you know.
All right, this story's coming from ABC News. This one pisses me off, and I hope it pisses you guys off. President Donald Trump is proposing immediate budget cuts of $18 billion from programs like medical research. Yeah, who needs that, right? Infrastructure and community grants so U.S. taxpayers, not Mexico, can cover the down payment on the border wall. The White House documents were submitted to Congress amid negotiations over a catch-all spending bill that would avert a partial government shutdown at the end of next month. The package would wrap up $1.1 trillion in unfinished spending bills and address the Trump administration's request for an immediate $30 billion in additional Pentagon spending. The latest Trump proposal, disclosed Tuesday, would eliminate $1.2 billion in National Institutes of Health research grants, a favor of both parties. The Community Development Block Grant Program, also popular, would be halved, amounting to a cut of $1.5 billion. And Trump would strip $500 million from a popular grant program for transportation projects. Some of that money would help pay for parts of the wall that you can climb over with a fucking ladder. Like Trump's 2018 proposal budget, which was panned by both Democrats and Republicans earlier this month, the proposals have little chance of being enacted. So, I don't know if this is going to pass. I hope it doesn't fucking pass. But there you go. He wants to cut social fucking programs, medical fucking research, to build a wall you can climb over with a fucking... This wall thing makes me so mad. You can dig a fucking hole. You can climb over it with a fucking ladder. It is literally dumb as fuck.
Yeah, they're not going to have a guard every 10 feet, you know, stopping people from climbing it with a ladder. It's not going to be manned like people think it's going to be manned. It's not a castle wall where you have your guards walking back and forth.
You might give Trump some ideas.
Yeah, no shit, huh?
I've heard people say, actually, this is Obama's wall because he passed a budget for Trump or for border wall in 2006 or whatever.
And it's like, I don't agree with that either.
I don't agree with that, but it's different because his wall was for specific parts. Okay, if you want to build, a little bit of wall and specific parts for certain reasons, okay, maybe I'll agree with that, but it's still dumb. You can just climb over it or walk to the end and then go around.
Yeah.
It's dumb. But Trump wants to spend tons of money putting a fence along the whole goddamn border.
Yeah, through towns too.
It's just
Like it's not like there's a huge distance between Mexico town and then an American town in some of these spots. Like there are straight up towns.
Yeah,
that
on
are
the border.
On the border.
Yeah.
You know, it would straight up cut through people's homes technically. You know, I don't or how do they decide, oh, well, let's put the town on the south side or the north side of the wall or this, that, and the other. There's so many issues with this, and they're looking at it like it's just a simple fix.
Mm-hmm.
And, oh, well, we'll just take money from medical research and stuff, and we'll just hurry and build this really quick wall. It's going to be cool. It's going to be tremendous.
And if you have a problem with immigration, instead of building a wall, maybe work on immigration policy.
There you go, yeah. I don't know. What is it? 40% of illegal immigrants come here on planes anyway?
It's somewhere around there.
Yeah.
And again, you can just buy a ladder.
Yeah. Or a boat, or just, swim out in the ocean a little bit and then swim around. And there you go. It's fine.
And not to mention that Mexicans are leaving at a higher rate than they are coming. But
well, yeah.
And that's part of the thing. Like, there was the push for tougher immigration. And so here's what happened. Immigrants who were here who kept on coming and going and living half their life in Mexico and half their life in America decided to stay put in America. So when you do things like that, it has unintended consequences of people deciding that, hey, since it's not going to be easy to get back and forth, I'm just going to stay here.
Yeah.
All right, so stories we didn't get to. Ivanka Trump joins the White House in an official role, even though she's not getting paid for it. So on the Gorsuch hearing, Democrats are still talking about doing a filibuster, and McConnell's threatening to change the filibuster because they're now in control of the Senate. Also, the other thing is Trump continues making claims about leaks being important and Russia not, and I'll get to that in a minute. And a couple final things is Trump's wiretapping claims are dead. Also, Republicans are still fighting to change the health care and also are claiming that Obamacare is in a death spiral. None of those things are true. All right, so let's go to my last story. And actually, before we do that, let's talk about. There's a comment or email.
Yes, we had a comment on our last podcast on YouTube. It's from, and I'm going to slaughter your name, Severia Zietst. Say it, Josh. Read it.
Severia Zest.
There you go. Us combined, we got it somewhat close. And they said, I'm glad the audio was clear and the reiteration on atheists being plural, because we always got to let you know. The evil atheists is plural. So thanks for the comment.
Yep. So this is, I have three prongs to this story. It's all about Russia and Donald Trump's campaign. So this is called, from PolitiFact, the possible ties between Trump and Russia explained. I'm only going to read a part of it, and that is Claim 3. Members of Trump's inner circle were in contact with Russia intelligence officials throughout the campaign. The main source for this is latest news on this topic is the New York Times, which based its February 14th report on 4 unnamed American officials. The officials told New York Times reporters that the phone records show Trump's associates communicated with Russian officials, including Trump's one-time chairman, Paul Manafort. But they have not found these to be evidence of collusion to disruption of the election. And then the next one is number 4, Claim 4. Former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn lied about the nature of his conversation with Russian ambassadors, and Attorney General Jeff Sessions didn't disclose to Congress meetings he had with the ambassador. Evidence. The Washington Post reported February 9th, 2017, that Flynn privately discussed U.S. sanctions against Russia with Sergei Kislyak, the Russian ambassador to the United States, between Election Day and the inauguration. Flynn, Vice President, and Mike Pence and others of the Trump administration had previously acknowledged that Flynn had spoke with Kislyak during the transition period, but they also said Flynn didn't talk about those sanctions during those conversations. This is significant because Flynn possibly lied to the FBI, and he may have violated a law that bans private citizens from negotiating with foreign leaders. The second story is Michael Flynn's immunity request rejected by the Senate Intelligence Committee, and this is coming from NBC News. The Senate Intelligence Committee turned down the request by former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn's lawyer for a grant to immunity in exchange for his testimony, 2 congressional sources told NBC News. The senior congressional official with direct knowledge said Flynn's lawyer was told it was wildly preliminary and that immunity was not on the table at this moment. A second source said the committee communicated that it is not receptive to Flynn's request at this time. So it's important to note that, and this is going to be, again, these are the stories that might end up getting Trump in a lot of trouble if his popularity goes down much further, because we're talking about Michael Flynn, who ran his campaign, who the Trump presidency has been trying to say, oh, he was just a temporary employee. He played a small role in the election. But he was the second in charge to Donald Trump. Flynn and Manafort seem to have these strong ties to the Russians and to this story, and the Trump campaign is distancing themselves. And this looks like it might be a blow-up because you don't request immunity unless you have something to say, or you fear that the FBI already has evidence on this.
So to bring up Sam Harris's podcast again, listen to his most recent, or second to last, called The Russian Connection. He has a guest on. She's an expert in a lot of the politics over there in Russia and the surrounding countries, and it's really informative. So I recommend everybody go listen to that. It's called The Russian Connection.
And what did she talk about?
Just she's lived over there in that area, and has seen a lot of the things, she's seen a lot of ways that campaigns were ran over there, and with Flynn running Trump's campaign, because he was, she could see a lot of similarities.
So the last story I have on this is AP-NORC poll. Majority of Americans favor Russian probe. New York, a slim majority of Americans favor an independent investigation into the Trump campaign's ties with Russia, the Russian government. According to a new poll, the Associated Press NORC Center for Public Affairs research showed that public views about the controversy during the congressional investigation are sharply divided along party lines. More than three-quarters of Democrats favor favor an independent investigation into Trump's Russian ties, while only 1/4 of Republicans do so. Overall, 52% of Americans favor such a probe, while 23% are opposed to it. Another 22% are neither favor or oppose, and if asked if they favor an independent investigation into the issues of Moscow meddling, the 2016 campaign, Americans broke along similar margin lines. And the probe that's going on right now is absolute horseshit. The guy who's running it keeps on telling Trump what they're looking into, and has blocked somebody from testifying on congressional floors. So this is something to pay attention to. It's an ongoing story, and that's all I got.
Great. Thanks for listening, everyone. This was a fun podcast. You can find this podcast on Stitcher and on Spreaker and on YouTube. So make sure you like it, you share it, you fave it, you do all that stuff. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/groups/the-evil-atheists. And you can email us. Email us if you have anything you'd like to add at recklesslyskeptical@gmail.com. Thanks for listening. We love you guys. Bye.
Peace out.